How big are some of the deals you've closed?
The one that ultimately will pay us is in the tens of millions. The one we just lost was over 100. I'm not worrying about what's going to happen next week. I'm worrying what I can control today. And so I solve the problems today I can solve today, because most of what you think is going to happen is not going to happen.
Welcome to the Maverick Entrepreneur Podcast, where business success meets personal purpose. Here we empower entrepreneurs to strike that perfect balance between massive growth and unwavering values. Dive deep into strategies, inspirations, and stories that ensure you set your foundation in faith and don't compromise your family on your ascent to the top. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Maverick Entrepreneur. This is me and my new radio voice. I hope you like it. I'm not really sure how much I like it, but it's coming back. So we're still doing this podcast. And with me today, why I am pushing through is because I'm sitting with a legend, and this is the one and only Ritchie Hale. Ritchie, what's up?
Morning. Nice to be here. Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, if you didn't know that accent, it's not American. Can you let everybody in? What is that accent?
It's a mix of British, Australian, and European. I grew up in lots of countries, and so...
Do you feel like that accent helps you open some doors in business?
Oh, in the American environment particularly. Unfortunately, you go to places like Australia, they think you're a POM, an English person. You go to England, you think you're Australian, and so it doesn't help at all there. In America, It does.
Yeah, here you're doing well here, so I like it. But thank you for joining us today. A couple teasers. I know we have a lot to discuss. You've always intrigued me. Your brilliant mind and how it thinks. I know you've helped a lot of people I know in my circles think bigger about business, entrepreneurship, scaling. You and I have sat down and had numerous conversations. We come from a same, I would say, pursuit of being around bigger people. And I don't find a lot of people enjoy that. But I know we've had similar coaching circles and masterminds, and you're a big proponent in that. I know that we're going to talk a lot today, so get ready. Couple things as a teaser, because I know we're going to get to it. What are the two biggest things you're passionate about right now?
I think the church and growing the church, and then AI, which is just... I get floored every day by what's going on in the AI space. And I don't think most people, I know most people don't even have a clue of what's really happening. And so
you think it's important for entrepreneurs to even know about that space?
It's fundamentally changing business and the way business is done. And the gap between what people think AI is, which is, the interface with ChatGPT and what's actually happening is so far apart now. The underlying fundamentals about how businesses operate and what the cost models associated with are changing, and people are not aware. So for an entrepreneur, if you're not moving into this space and becoming aware of it, the model is going to change.
So what I'm hearing is, if you are an entrepreneur and you don't accept where this is going, you're going to be left in the dust.
You'll lose your business. Fundamentally, I was listening to Eric Schmidt and Sam Altman talking on a podcast the other day, and they reckon globally 300 million jobs will go.
Whoa.
That's an enormous amount of people that are going to lose their capability and their income. And then if you look at and most of that's going to be in white collar. Yeah. It's not going to be in the blue collar. That's already started to happen. Robotics is already in there. But in the white collar space, that's where the shift is happening now. And it's fundamental.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds like we're going to have to talk about it. So stay tuned for that conversation. But right now, what I want to talk about, first of all, you have a unique background. What'd you do in the military?
I flew helicopters in the medical evacuation arena. So what's called combat rescue today, it was called AME in the time we were in there. And so we basically went to people who'd been hurt and picked them up.
In war zones?
In all environments, civil and military environments.
Have you been shot at?
Once.
Okay.
And that's, you hear these ding, ding, and you go, what's that? And then the person I was flying with was very experienced in that space, and he said, we've just been shot at. So, and speaking to guys who've, come under heavy, they tend to fire at the front of the aircraft because that's where they know the pilots are.
Yeah.
And so it's a humbling experience when you're coming in to pick somebody up, and the whole front of the aircraft gets brassed up. That wasn't my experience, but it was some guys, and they really questions what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
going in there to save lives, and that's your job.
Well, I love talking to any sort of aviation expert because one, you got to learn how to fly. Two, you got to learn avionics. Three, you got to stay alive. You got to learn how to multitask and do multiple things at once and save someone's life.
Yeah, they talk about flying the aircraft and fighting the aircraft.
Yeah.
And they're two very different things. And I remember coming out of the flying environment, training environment, to the operational squadron on my first flight. And I'm flying there, and I've got a qualified flying instructor, senior guy, and, guiding me along. And there's 6 radios going at once. And I'm having the helmet fire and no idea what's going on. And he just leans across and switches off 5 of the radios and says, right, don't worry about those, just fly the aircraft. Because you don't have the capacity when you're coming, even after 2 years of training, you're now at the beginning where you actually start to learn how to fly operationally. And then a year later, I'm sitting in the left-hand seat with a junior guy, and exactly the same thing happens. And you're able to multitask at a level, and they build that up in layers as you go on and build that competency up. So the flying regularly is a real thing. You keep that skill up. It's a perishable skill. And then they build this competency level up to a very, very, very high level where you're able to, operate in those environments quite safely in extreme conditions at night, bad weather.
It's definitely a learned skill. I always bring in young doctors to work for me, and I'm always just mind blown how the school just does not prepare them for real life. And then they want to come work for me, but they expect the moon, and I'm thinking to myself, you have no idea what kind of person I'm going to turn you into.
That's it. You arrive in these things. If you accept, you come out of school at the basics.
Yeah.
You actually can know how to survive effectively, and you can, in flying, lift the aircraft off the ground and fly it around reasonably safely. Then you actually start learning. It's one of those environments where it's going to humble you.
Yeah.
If you don't pay attention and don't continue to learn. And business is the same. You get humbled by the marketplace if you don't learn.
Don't you look back now and you say, man, look how God just set me up. Like you're a pilot on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
Learning all these skills, but how many of those skills now today?
The big one that came forward was the leadership, going through the equivalent of West Point, which is called the Royal Military College. We were on what's called a short course, for specialists for pilots, but you learn leadership, and they say to you, leaders are not born, they're made. And that making is a fundamental set of skills. And today, myself and Carolyn, my wife, lead Awaken You at church, and we're teaching leadership as a core capability.
Yeah.
And it's the same stuff.
But it's amazing. How many students are in that right now?
We've got about 150 students in that program.
150 students in that program. But it's amazing if you did, and I don't know if you do this, but if you do pre-interviews, it's amazing how many people come in overconfident with their skill set.
Oh, we talk about that in the leadership, but when we do the pre-interviews to select people, some people don't get selected, and they're going, well, why not? And so one of the things we do in the leadership is we assess them at their levels of leadership. We use John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership because it's a nice framework. And, they think they're a top performing leader. And in fact, they're completely positional. So they've basically been given a position because they've been standing there the longest. And therefore they're now leading, but they're actually not a leader at all.
How sad is that?
The lack of awareness of where they're at, and in most cases, sometimes the lack of willingness to even explore the fact that they're deficient is the biggest thing. Because as a leader, you're always learning, you're always refining. It's a perishable skill, and it's going to change in different scenarios.
I mean, someone needs to hear that today because it's amazing how humility, people just don't get in humble wanting to learn. It's like they have to get humbled.
Yeah, and again, skill from the military. We were talking about it, on the platform the other day. Is one of the things the military does, particularly in officer training, is break you down, humble you, till they can teach you. And what they're doing is making you teachable. And at that point onwards, I think a lot of people have seen the Blue Angels, a room before and after the flight, and where they basically put themselves up for criticism and say, I did this, safety thing and whatever it was. And that idea of being completely vulnerable and open to being changed and feedback all the time, it becomes part of who you are. And that is an important thing. Sometimes it's not easy to receive because, people are just prod and, it's an ugly spot they're prodding on. Yeah. But you've got to ultimately be willing to receive that information and move forward.
I always tell people in ministry, like, hey, get in the marketplace because the marketplace will correct you. And if you don't correct, you'll go out of business. Yep. In ministry, people just go, oh, well. I'm like, it doesn't work like that in the marketplace.
But the result of hurt people. And so in a ministry environment, you just get that damage going downstream.
Yeah.
And so you as a leader have really got to be conscious of the fact that your capability is impacting people.
Yeah.
Because it's a people business.
Well, it's a tough line to walk, I will say, in ministry. The one thing, being in the marketplace in ministry is, when I give feedback in my office, they're on my payroll. They're going to take it and either adapt or they won't have a job. In ministry, you have so many volunteers, you just can't be as straightforward.
You can't be as direct, and you have to build relational equity with people to be able to have those conversations and get into those carefrontations where, as a leader, you're building relationship first, and then you can go in for the harder conversations.
Well, I had the fortunate experience of you inviting me to Awaken You the other night. It was funny. I did have someone reach out to me and said, "Do you think it's appropriate to be so direct?" And I said, I could never preach that. I could never sit in a role with a bunch of volunteers and teach that. You are paying to be developed. It is the only place that is appropriate to teach that other than our business model, which is Pathfinders. So it's only 2 avenues, but that is the exact place to directly speak into things, to rattle you because you are calling yourself a leader. You are submitted to the idea that this is university. Awaken You.
High level of accountability.
High level of accountability. If you can't handle the heat there,
you're not going to handle heat anywhere else.
Yeah, you can't handle it anywhere else.
But it's important. We get a lot of feedback in those as some of those carefrontations take place in different places. But in most cases, the students adapt. We deal with identity early on.
Yeah.
And once we start pulling at identity, people realize that their ego is involved in a lot of it. Once that starts to move out the way, then they're teachable.
It's a safe place to do it. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I see the fruit of what you guys are doing there. Absolutely. It's like masterminds.
Yep.
It's a high level mastermind, but in the ministry sense.
You surround yourself with high level people, and you become more high level.
Yeah. So, what do you think about what masterminds have you been a part of, and what do you think about them?
The 2 big ones are War Room and Epic, and the reason, what you're trying to do is surround yourself with bigger thinkers, and you're in those environments long enough. I always say to people, just be in the room. Being in the room is an important thing. And when I joined War Room right at the very beginning of it in, I think, the second session. And then I dropped out about 2 years later and came back 4 years later. And now one of the guys, 2 of the guys that were in the original War Room, one of the guys had a very small piece of software and he was barely making a living, but he stretched himself to get into there. Now he's worth over $1 billion. And he's bought banks, and his software's blown up, and he's a massive real estate guy. And another guy's just closed a $9.5 billion transaction, and they were in the room at the beginning, and they stayed in the room, and that's 12 years. And then so that now they are where they are, and so staying in the room is important because you may find it very, very uncomfortable. The imposter syndrome is a big part of that, where you don't feel you're worthy to be in the room.
Yeah.
And but if you stay in the room long enough, you will get humbled for sure.
Yeah.
And business will not go necessarily the way you plan. Things will go badly wrong. And the question is, what do you do? And how do those people around you help you out? And where do you go next? And
the power to stay, I think, is
it's humbling because when it's not going well, the last place you want to be is around a bunch of successful guys. But the only place you need to be is around a bunch of successful guys.
One of my mentors said something to me early on. He just said, I've been with the same 5 guys. I think he was the 6th for X amount of years, and we never miss a phone call. Matter of fact, our PAs or EAs, specifically, don't even book flights. We cannot be a plane on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. And I was like, what? And they're all over East Coast, West Coast. I said, so you don't miss? And he goes, no, we don't miss. Because
important.
Yeah, and he gave a couple stories, and I was just like, the guy that was the most successful, which wasn't that successful, but was most successful at the time, he went through it. And they were like 2 or 3 years into this thing, and they were all growing in their business, and he swung, and boy, it just went wrong. And he said if it wasn't for that group, that his marriage would have been done. But they all poured together. They all ended up writing him a check so he could restart. He says he's never forgot it. So they all wrote him a check for a lot of money because they believed in him. He restarted. Now he's a billionaire. Most successful one in the group by far. They're all very successful, multi-millionaires. He's the multi-billionaire. And he said he wouldn't have been able to do it again if it wasn't for that mastermind, that group of guys that believed in him. He got humbled, checked his ego. Now he's a different person. But he sends all the rest of the guys and their family. He pays for a family vacation. Turks and Caicos, Bali, Costa Rica. Pays for the whole thing every Christmas. And so they've now, on family trips, paid for by him because he never wants to forget what they did for him.
I had an incident when I was going through Pathfinder's apprenticeship, and brought in some private equity just before COVID, and right in the middle of COVID, they shut down the company and pulled the private equity, took the company off me. And I was in Pathfinders, and if it wasn't for one of the leaders in Pathfinders calling me out and said, right, you got to present to everybody in Pathfinders what's just happened, which was humbling. And then I'm sitting there going, what do I do now? I have to stand up and move forward. Yeah. And so I basically started to reposition to get myself back out, goal setting and getting a direction established, and building, vision cards and vision boards and, all the mechanics that you use. And 4 weeks later, I presented how I'd got myself back out of the hole. And 7 months later, I bought a multi-million-dollar company with no money down, with no cash flow at all. And so you learn to respond to those situations, but it's the people who pick you up, because you're going to get knocked down. It's just a fact. Yeah. The question is, who's going to pick you up? Yeah. And have you got the people around you who can pick you up? And when it gets really rough, you just got to get real with people and go, this is a tough season. I'm having a hard time here. Help. And then get picked up. But
how many people, this is what's amazing. They don't ask for help until they've buried themselves.
Yeah, and it's difficult because it's, business is largely an ego-driven, there's a lot of ego in it. And when it goes badly wrong, it's very tough, and you've got to front up to the problem and pivot away, emotionally disconnect from where you've just been, which is, a hard thing, and try and move yourself forward. And it's going to be hard in those early weeks, months, as you pivot away. Yeah. And the question is there people that know that it's hard? Yeah.
But there's light at the end of the tunnel. So what are some strategies? I love how you just had a little think tank teaching all these young people how to buy businesses with no money down. One of our good friends signs a deal in 2 days, taking over a company. And he had no idea how to do it. And if it wasn't for your seed, taking over a family legacy, actually. Yeah. And he's going to go from being successful in one field and being a youth leader to now he's about to
face it.
He's about to face it and step into wealth, and he's going to have a whole new set of problems.
Different set of problems.
But luckily he's got us. Yeah. We've been through all those problems.
I remember him approaching me about the business and asking the question, and as the deal kind of materialized, I went, this is a really good opportunity for you. So it's great. But it's one of those things, again, I was in a mastermind where one of the leaders there, and he's done 2,600 or been involved in 2,600 transactions.
2,600
transactions, yeah. He's done a bunch himself, but he's been involved in 2,600 transactions and actually went through how to do it. And to me, that's just internal belief. If you believe you can, you can. And a lot of what you think happens in that space doesn't happen. And are the deals complicated? Yeah, they're difficult to do. But if you are persistent, you can do them. But it does require big thinking, creative thinking, and a lot of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, yeah. Suspension of disbelief. That's a term you don't hear of too often.
Yeah, because people believe, people believe what they believe. Whether it's true or not is actually irrelevant. Yeah. They believe it. But if you are faced with scenarios where a lot of your core beliefs are challenged, but there's people who are further down the road than you've been down that path, then whatever they believe is true.
Yeah,
What you believe is irrelevant.
Well, this house is based on I had to suspend some disbelief. You know what I mean? You were here for that whole journey. I get to sit in it. I do my podcast in my house just as a reminder.
No, it's great.
You know what I
mean? It was a great journey to watch on the edge, and a lot of times I was sitting there going, what is he doing? But I didn't say anything because I know that what I say is important.
Yeah.
And so I said nothing, but which
is also very important.
But it was watching it. It's helped seed in me the ability to go after bigger things, some of which have worked, some of which haven't. Yeah. And those things are important, but it's good to see people around you winning big, because then it's possible, and you have to suspend your disbelief, or whatever you believe to be true is not relevant there, and try and follow the footsteps.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had to suspend that disbelief because I watched my dad go through things and not come out on the other side because he had too many negative Nellies around him. And who you surround yourself with, what they say for you or against, is critical.
I've been in a season where a lot of negativities come in, and a lot of it, because it's been a very complex set of things I've been involved in, and they've gone wrong. And those are humbling to do. Yeah. But now you spoke the other night at the Awaken You, and a lot of it's just things you need to hear again.
Yeah.
Controlling your mind. Fundamentals of controlling what you think, controlling what you say, and pivoting back into a mindset approach where you can clean your mind up and get going again in the right direction.
Well, if you don't clean your mind up, it gets dirty when I plant. I mean, my house has a lot of flowers. You have to intentionally, just to keep them alive. I've never had to do one thing for the weeds out there, and I got a lot of them. I mean, my what do you call him? My yard tender. He came to me today and he goes, "I'm overwhelmed. I just need to bring out another guy to get ahead of these weeds." And I said, "Isn't that amazing how these weeds grow? We don't even water them, care for them." But that's the world. So that negativity, that tend towards chaos will always be there. And we have to clean up our mind. We have to take inventory. Where did that thought come from? Where did that negative? But most people, they're going at such a pace, they don't even know how they ended up over here.
And that's been the past couple of years has been really like that. And so now it's pivoting back and, listening to things which, all the way over here, I was listening to worship music, just to get my mindset in the right place. Yeah. Because it's, when you get into those difficult business situations, it can get really, really heavy going. Mm-hmm. And so you're working your way out of it, and which is great. Got a vision of where to go, but it's still, you've got to actually do the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Yep. You can't take your foot off the gas. And you got to take time to, I've always taught this. I still, I put an hour a week just to think. But that's where I do my thinking about, dude, where did I get that thought from? Why am I thinking that way about smallness? I just called, one of my mentors and I said, "Hey, can you help me process this thought I'm having?" And he said something so interesting. He goes, "Oh, that's not your belief. You picked that up somewhere." "Where did you pick that up?"
There's a line.
Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, it's so true." And he goes, "Yeah, you got to get that. You got to get that out of your subconscious, because that's gonna keep you in the stuck game."
Yeah, I remember one of my mentors, when he got into a really difficult situation, he said to me, I'm not worrying about what's going to happen next week. I'm worrying what I can control today. Yeah. And so I solve the problems today I can solve today, because most of what you think is going to happen is not going to happen.
Time you get there,
false evidence appearing real.
Exactly.
You go down these rabbit holes, and they're really easy to go down. And it's a discipline to bring it back and go, right, I'll solve the problems I can solve today. Yeah. And tomorrow's going to be what it's going to be. And I'll deal with tomorrow.
You've developed some, how big are some of the deals you've closed?
Oh, the one that ultimately will pay us is in the tens of millions. The one we just lost was over 100, and that was painful.
Yeah, it's painful. I lose $100, it's still painful. So I mean, 100 million, that's like a swift kick to the crotch.
And it's there's a lot of there's a lot of collateral damage that we're managing through that, and just managing our way through those problems. And you've just got to keep focusing on what you can solve. And it's very easy to get sucked into the problems that you've got to deal with, and you just got to solve today what you got to solve today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, if you had to, you've had some big wins too, so talk about some of those big wins. What would you have done different after you won? Would you have done something different?
Yes, I've had a tendency in my life to go all in on the next thing, and that's been a problem.
Did you get bored easy?
No, I think a lot of it you want to create an outcome, and you get visibility of what other people are doing, and you transfer your belief system onto some of the things they're doing, and you start to see what you can do if you play in certain places.
Yeah.
What you fail to necessarily understand when you're walking into that is the price that people pay. Because there is a big price to operate on some of these very large scale environments. Yeah. And what you start to understand is just what it takes. And then you ask yourself the question, is it worth it on a personal level? Because there's a price that some of these people pay to end up where they end up. Yeah. And the question is, can you maintain the balance? And what I've done is I've gone all in on business deals, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't. And when they don't, so the learning for me at the moment is to say, okay, I need to take money off the table as we go, and then limit the risk much more, and control the risk. Yeah. Because in this scenario, the risk has been too high, and the price has been too big.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I mean, you've been stabbed in the back by a few times by a few people, but you're still smiling, you're still loving, you're still willing to go in on partnerships. How do you keep your heart pure after someone's taken advantage of your wisdom?
I've always taken the approach that you can go, America's a very litigious environment, and you can go down that road if you want. But what's going to happen is you're going to suck a huge amount of your energy into a massively negative space. Yeah. And so I've taken the approach where, do I want my life to be negative, or do I want to just go, okay, I need to take a pause moment here. Okay, what did I learn? How can I move forward? And then move forward, because moving forward with hope and possibility is better than fighting a battle that can go on for years. When I lost the private equity company, the lawsuits went on for 3 years. People were in battle for 3 years, and I talked to them, and that's all I'd hear. And I'm going, I don't want a bar of that, because you can't progress forward and fill people up and fill yourself up and fill your family up if you are in a battle. Yeah. Now, sometimes you've got to clean up the mess. That just is what it is. Yeah. But you don't need to go and start punching people in the face to do it. And so I've always taken that approach: is I'll forgive them, I'll move on, and just put a line in the sand and go, that happened. That's great. Awesome. Let's move on.
It's so important. The line, the Bible says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. I was like, well, I better stay strong because I'm losing all my joy right now. I'm about to punch somebody. And I remember I was praying about this situation, and God's like, you're going to get through this. Be praying for them, because their life's going to go another direction because they were jealous of you or intimidated by you or whatever. And he said, just pray for their soul. Pray for them. Watch what I do in your life. And people in the middle of this one situation, even my attorney said, why does this not affect your mental happiness whatsoever? I just broke you some news. I said, oh, because I know what God's going to do on the other side of this. So I stayed encouraged the whole time as I was I was like a punching bag. But the truth is, you can let people steal your joy, and then it robs you of everything else that you could do. And so I find it important, and hearing the battles you've been through, but you're still standing, still smiling, still enjoy a glass of wine and a cigar.
Oh yeah, that idea of putting a line in the sand, the balance. I think right now, if I say the challenge right now is just navigating some of the stuff that's been going on, and working your way forward into a stable environment.
Have you learned a lot?
I think one of the Caleb was preaching last night from the UK, and one of the things he said is, when he went up against Goliath, David went up against Goliath. Goliath had the sword, but it was David who used the sword, and so his opponent's sword became his weapon. And it's that idea that whatever comes against you, you're going to ultimately use it and learn. And one of the things that's been nice in my life, I've done a lot of different things, and so you get this vast amount of experience of different aspects of life, different business aspects, a lot of different things in business, and you get this pool of knowledge that you can pull on. And the question then is, how do you apply the sword that you've just picked up? Because the knowledge that I've got in the past 2 years has revealed a market that I didn't even know existed. 90% of people don't even know it's happening.
Yeah.
But the large financial instrument space is a really interesting marketplace to be in. Complex, difficult to get into, and very, very difficult to stay in and be in. But the rewards are enormous in terms of what you can do there. And so the question I've got is, okay, where do I apply that and how do I apply that? I've got some grind to do at the moment, but then it's like, okay, just keep that in focus.
So you never lost your vision on something bigger?
No, not something bigger. On a day-to-day basis, I mean, Carol and I had a fight last night and this morning about some of the short-term issues, but that's just the reality of life, and I need to control my mind and, deal with that. But, I've got a vision in terms of where to go now and what to do, and then I'll keep the bigger picture in mind all the time. But you've got to pivot away from these things and go, okay, that's not happening that way. This is happening over here. How do I keep moving forward?
I appreciate you because you're still walking through your own stuff, and it's like you're not doing base hits. You like swinging for the fences.
Yes.
I mean, you go for big deals, man, which is so intimidating for me, and I love it because it makes me think. But every time I hear this thing you're going on, I was like, dang, I need to level up my thinking. But how would you encourage young entrepreneurs today to stay in the fight? Because so many feel like they got a word, that they're going to leave their W-2. They're going to go for it. They hit their first road bump.
So I remember someone saying to me, a very successful guy, and I think I've heard this from Russell Brunson as well, said it a few months ago. But I'd heard it a few times, and one of the things about business is 98% of the things you try will fail. And if you look at businesses that succeed, so out of the businesses that start, I think in 5 years, 90% of them are gone. And out of the 10% that are remaining, in the next 5 years, 90% of those are gone as well. So the odds of success in terms of building from scratch is low and difficult. So are you going to get hit? Yes, you are. The question is, can you take the 98 to 1? I remember building a funnel offer, online, and we did, in 30 days, we built 53 sales funnels and tested 7,000 ads.
Holy cow.
To get one funnel to work.
What?
And that was a brutal experience that was not fun at all to do, but we did it, and again, when I worked in the supplement space, we took a funnel to 40 million. And
is that the fish oils?
Yeah.
Oh, they were amazing fish
and
oils.
So we took that to 40 million, and a lot of that was just grind and testing. And I remember when we lost the funnel one day, we put on the video sales letter, we had the call to action 8 seconds off of the pop-up on the screen, and the video were out of sync, and the funnel collapsed. And so what you learn from that is that there's a lot of micro things that have to happen, that you have to learn to make this stuff work. And when you get all of those things right, then it works. So hence the 98% failure rate. Run ads.
My buddy literally struggle, figured one thing out. He woke up to 120,000 in his bank account.
Yeah.
24 hours.
Yep.
He literally thought it was, he stole someone's money. He thought it was a joke. So he called the bank to make sure that someone didn't just accidentally, a bank put the wrong check in the wrong account. He was like, there's no way my funnel could have his funnel exploded after fail. Did one little tweak, just went to bed out of exhaustion. Woke up to $124,000 in one day.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen, and I remember when we got the funnel to perform in the fish oil, and we were running up to 200, 300,000 a day. You lose it and you gain it. I remember I used to watch a graph, and if the graph was trending up in the morning, then we knew we had everything right. As soon as it trended off, we knew we had some issues in there. But that happened multiple times, and and you get those things to work. They're great, but you've got to live the 98 times that it fails to get it there.
I mean, you've done so many different things. Why do you keep pivoting?
I guess you're chasing that, that alignment in terms of who you are and what you do. And I've gone back into the IT space, which is where my career started, and I spent a lot of time in it because it's something I understand really well. And what I'm understanding is that it's changing. So that pivot into that space was out of circumstance. The deal I've gone after, while we'll continue down that road, I need to be able to deal with the delays that particularly occur in that marketplace.
And I think it's important for entrepreneurs to know, like, you may get into something and then you realize once you're in it, like for me, I was in, the coaching space, and then I got into politics in my profession, had to let that go. Then I got back into it, but I got back into it thinking way bigger, understanding. And it's almost like box jumping. Then I got into the restaurant business, which helped me refine lots of procedures in my chiropractic business. And then I realized, man, I don't make enough money over here. That's a lot of headaches and a lot of employees and a lot of, craziness for the
dollar.
The money.
Yeah.
And I realized I'd have to open 10 of those to get the money that I wanted. And I go, that's not worth the headache. So sure, I opened up some restaurants, had some fun. Family's good at it. I pivot, I'm out, made some money. But
it's taking what you learn. And what's really interesting is when you learn something in one market and you can take it into another market, or when you've got a wave of stuff that's changing the fundamentals. Then again, you should pivot into the space and ride the wave.
Well, I just had this one guy who literally just found me randomly. And because of what I learned in the restaurant business, I went and literally his collections went up 75% in 45 days. And they're not going to go down now. It was the greatest ROI ever for him. And it was just a few things he didn't understand about the service industry, even though he went from gas stations to restaurants.
Yeah, there's a hidden set of things that the only way to learn them is to step into the space. Yeah. And so people go into businesses thinking, I'll be a real estate investor, or I'll be, a restaurant owner. Yeah. And then you learn the hard lessons. The marketplace will teach you what you need to learn. And so there's always those hidden things, and coaching and masterminds help in terms of trying to shorten that learning cycle. But it's going to be there. You're going to go to school. It's going to cost you time or money or both.
Yeah, my cousin wanted to get out of his job. So we said, come learn the family business, restaurants. And so he came in, and finally after 3 months, he called me. He was so ticked at my uncle, my family, just saying, I am grinding, blah, blah, blah. So I called my uncle. My uncle's like, he's lazy. And he gets grumpy so he's not a people person. So I called him back. I said, well, you're lazy. So he's burning the laziness out of you. And the second thing is, when you're grumpy, you're repelling people. And this is a service industry. And he says, you're not getting it. So he said, go kick cans and go back to where you came from. If you think.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's a dead end, but all these promises were made. I said, yeah, that one day you could own your own store. But right now, if you open your own store, you'd be a failure. You'd crash and burn. And you just don't see it. So maybe you should trust what we're trying to do. 6 more months later, he had an opportunity. Michael said, you're ready. Took over a store in Phoenix, exploded it, opened 2 more. He'll literally make more money than the 10 years.
Yeah.
Literally this 1 year.
But it's that going through the education.
But he had to go through it. And now, you know what he said? I talked to him. He said, if I would have quit, I'd never be walking in this. He'll be a millionaire. He never thought he'd be a millionaire in his life.
There's a guy online and Instagram, and he goes and asks really successful people. And one of the first questions he asks them, have you ever been broke? And everything, without exception, they all say the same answer, which is yes. Yeah. But it's the price of doing business. And, when you speak to super successful people, they've all been through the ringer because it's part of the journey. And if they haven't been through the ringer, they will go through the ringer at some point shortly, but it's true. You speak to everybody and they've all been through the grind at some point and had to face, their darkest fears.
Yeah. And they're still sweating it out even on the biggest levels,
Just different size problems.
Different size. This one guy just said to me, I said, "Oh man, do you ever go through it?" He goes, "Listen, I just went through a massive, it's different size problem. Man, this would have killed me back in the day, but I just realized same problem I used to have this one, but at a much different scale. I make a mistake now." He goes, "It's tens of millions of dollars."
That's right. And to entrepreneurs, one of the things I say is business is about solving problems. You start solving small problems, and then your capacity goes up as you learn to solve bigger and bigger and bigger problems, till eventually you're solving $100 million problems, and then you get paid hundreds of million dollars. Yeah. But until you get there, you're in the grind, and bigger business is just bigger problems. We've got one of the businesses we own. We've got a huge amount of revenue in the pipeline now and coming through, which is causing enormous problems in the business. Because the business was never designed to run at this scale, and so there's huge issues that we're solving on a week by week basis. Trying to navigate our way through this to, a much, much bigger business. We're having to rewrite the whole software platform that we're in the business with, because it just doesn't work, and things are not working.
I laughed the other day thinking about a business thing. This guy came over and he saw my pool and he goes, "That's the most epic pool." And he was going on and on. I go, "Bro, do you know how many headaches that pool's caused me?" It's been drained accidentally twice.
I was going to say the amount of equipment down the back on the other side of the fence.
Like, I love when people come over and they just go, the other day I had to reconvince myself, you know what I mean? That I just didn't want to stick explosives in it. I'm thinking to myself, if this guy only knew, you know what I mean? You're complaining about this. I had to spend 10 G's just to fill it back up. You know what I mean? It's like other people's vision of what's awesome.
And I always thought when you get successful in business, you kind of get to have this passive life. It's just not the case. My experience is that as you get bigger, you get into bigger things and the bigger problems, and you then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figure problems.
Yeah, I was joking around. I called my CPA. I was like, "What's this bill for?" And he goes, "Do you know how many companies I have to manage for you?" And he goes, "I've been giving you a discount because you've been with me 20 years. And he goes, "You got to understand this is proportional to what you're doing." And I was like, "Oh, I guess you're right. I haven't looked at your bill in a long time. And now that I'm getting into my weeds on everything to be a better steward, I just started realizing all this." I was like, man, this management of money is ridiculous. It's expensive. So now I got to start another company just to offset the management of that money.
With the pain of not having the money is
it's all a journey. The bottom line is,
it's a journey.
New levels, new devils.
That's it.
New levels. It's hashtag lions and levels.
Yes, all the way.
But it's worth the adventure.
It is absolutely worth the adventure. And you get down the road, and if you haven't lived and you haven't gone for it, you get one life. You might as well throw the dice and go for it.
Go for it.
I have a thing I call the rocking chair test, which is, when you're faced with difficult decisions, you want to sit on your porch as an 80-year-old with your blanket on your knees, rocking in your rocking chair. You don't want to say, "I wish I'd."
Yes.
And so I've always used that as a measure. When I went into the military, as a pilot, the odds of success were 1 in 600. So 1 out of every 600 people who came in actually got to fly.
Wow.
It's now 1 in 2,000, I'm told. But at the time, it was 1 in 600. But I went in and went, if I don't try, then I'll always regret not going in and trying. And so 6,500 of us went in, 11 of us finished.
That's amazing. All right, give us one as we land the plane, because part 2, we're going in this AI stuff. So land the plane. Give one piece of advice for all the entrepreneurs watching today. Business, life, ministry, peace, whatever piece of advice you can give them.
Roll the dice, have a go. But don't expect it to be easy, and expect to be solving problems all the time. And the bigger the problem you solve, the more money you'll earn. It's really simple. But keep the balance. Don't suck away from family and ministry and church. You've got to keep it balanced, because if you don't, you'll end up in a worse place.
Yeah, it's true. It's great advice. All right, Ritchie, thank you for this part 1. Are you excited about part 2?
Yeah, I'm very excited about part 2.
Okay, we're going to take a bathroom break. Get ready for part 2, all about AI, the future, and being successful. Thanks for watching this part 1. God bless you. We'll see you at part 2 of the Maverick Entrepreneur with Ritchie Hale.